Allophones, What Are Those? By Jessica Butler, Alexa Swan, and Sam Schrepfer. One day, little Johnny came up to his teacher, Miss A, confused as to why the letter T sounded differently in all his vocabulary words for the week. He asked Miss A, "Why is it so difficult to pronounce the word little with a T sound instead of D? Shouldn't a word that has the letter T sound like T? That makes sense to me." Miss A responded, "Well, Johnny, this is an issue with allophones." Luckily for Johnny, Miss A knew a lot about allophones because her college linguistic classes taught a lot of basics about how language works. She was in the same position as Johnny before she took her college classes. "I guess I never thought about it critically," she thought to herself. She looked back in her notes that she had saved and found loads of information she could teach her students. The next day in class, Miss A decided to have a lesson on why words with the same letters may sound differently. She told her students that in their heads the letters might all sound the same, but the way they produce it through their voices makes them sound differently. Basically, these sounds are just variations in pronunciation of a single phoneme. Let me explain to you what an allophone actually is. Miss A went on to explain how to determine an allophone. Step 1. Minimal pairs are words that could be the exact same, but only have one phoneme that is different. For example, rid and lid have the phonemes L and R that are different, and therefore we can distinguish the two words apart. These are in contrastive distribution because the surrounding phonemes are the same. They are not allophones. Step 2. There are also words that are in complementary distribution, which means that we can determine the meaning of the word because of the predictable environment. This means that certain sounds only occur based on the surrounding phonemes. Therefore, when you say little, it sounds like the T's are D's. Or, when you say top, it feels like you are blowing air out compared to when you say stop. All of these words are variations of one phoneme, T, and therefore are allophones. "There is also free variation," said Miss A. "This means that when people speak different dialects of the same language, that they may pronounce something with an aspiration, like when you breathe out air when saying a sound like the phoneme T, and others may not." Miss A showed her students this for a more visual look at these definitions. To determine the phonetic status of two sounds, first, are the sounds in complementary distribution? If yes, are the sounds phonetically similar? If yes, they are allophones of the same phoneme. If no, they belong to two separate phonemes. Back to question 1. Are the sounds in complementary distribution? If no, does substituting one sound for the other change the meaning? If yes, these also belong to two separate phonemes. If no, they are in free variation. There are also other things to consider, such as aspiration and fronting, Miss A said. Aspiration is when you use extra air to pronounce a word or sound. For example, voicing is distinctive in English, but aspiration is distinctive in Korean. English typically does not use differences in aspiration to signal differences in meaning, which makes those differences harder to hear. Another thing to keep in mind is fronting. Fronting is when you are articulating a word, your tongue is farther forward in your mouth. For example, when you say lay, you are fronting, said Miss A. Another thing to consider is plural words. They have a different phonetic makeup than singular words. The phoneme Z is responsible for the various plural S sounds. That sound is different when used in the word cats versus dogs, or even horses. The parts that make up the plural S sound in each of those words are allomorphs to one another, Miss A explained. "Thanks, Miss A," said Johnny. Johnny felt much more confident now, and came back to school the next day with his own flowchart to explain allophones versus different phonemes, using some of his favorite characters. Miss A was able to use her linguistic knowledge to further her students' abilities. Who knew the material from those classes could be so useful? The end.